Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned to Morning Express. Many thanks to Peace for taking us through the issues in the news this morning. On the program this morning, our main topic of discussion is tailored around the Global Energy Independence Day 2025. Every year on the 10th of July, the Global Energy Independence Day is commemorated with an advocacy to transition from fossil fuel to sustainable energy. On the program this morning in our studios is an energy expert, engineer Osayande Felix Omokaro, who joins us for this conversation. Engineer, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here. I'm also excited that it's the Global Energy Independence Day as well for us energy experts and for the whole world also.
Now, narrowing it down to Nigeria, how achievable is this conversation around a transition to sustainable renewable energy, noting that 90% of our revenue source is from our dependence on fossil fuel?
I mean, everything is possible. We have clean, sustainable, renewable energy depending on the time you use in abundance in Nigeria. We are basically at the equator. We have a lot of sunshine. Compared to other countries that are actually have gone very far in using their renewable energy. But compared to us, I think we have the great potential. And it has shown by the way it's been adopted, especially in households, across businesses, that this is a very practical and the low-hanging fruit solution to our energy problems.
Now, let's talk about the significance of the theme for this year. Embracing the future of global energy independence. How ready are we as a nation to embrace this, in your opinion, and the significance of the theme?
I wouldn't say we are ready, but we have the capacity, the opportunities to be there. So it's not basically rocket science. Every country is basically going towards independence of its energy, because energy is basically security, energy security. So if you are not independent, then how are you going to provide for your citizens? How would the economy boom? How would the healthcare sector? You know, the challenges that go around this sector. So this is very, very important for us.
Now, one word that has been recurrent in your first few statements is challenges, particularly when it comes to Nigeria's energy security. Let's talk about the challenges as it stands. Talking to any average Nigerian on the streets, the first thing they would point to is the instability of our national grid, as it were. How do we achieve sustainability of energy security with that challenge as probably the major one?
Well, for now, if you look at it, the government is actually looking through its agencies, looking at decentralized energy systems through the Rural Electrification Agency, and also through donor partners, creating programs that will be able to provide energy, especially in rural areas. You know, everybody's due to the insecurity and other challenges, everybody's focusing on the urban areas, and usually the grid, or majorly there are areas the grid cannot get to. So those areas are being powered through sustainable energy solutions like mini grids. But for the main central discussion, or the central idea, which is the national grid, it has not helped us in any way. The grid has collapsed so many times. You've had issues of vandalism, and it's becoming already a broken record. Everybody knows these challenges. So I don't think that we are there yet, but we're going to get there if we put in the right policies, the right framework, and we can achieve this.
Now let's talk about policy formulations and the framework, because it came as a shock to many Nigerians when the presidential villa indicated in its decision to transition to sustainable energy, and the money is budgeted for the installation of photovoltaic setups in the Aso Rock. Yeah. But it's against the national plan, where millions of Nigerians' homes are still powered by electricity, as it were, that is not sustainable when you look at the solar component of it. Yes. How do we deduce from that the commitments of government in policies that would see a commitment to this transition?
To be honest, it was, or it is bad optics. If you are going to government leads through policies and other things, so if you are really going to solve this problem or show that you're going to solve the problem, then it's not a bad idea going off the grid for the villa. I've been an advocate that large institutions like military bases, universities should be off the grid. However, for this was really bad optics, because there was really maybe a lack of communication. Okay, we are installing solar here, but for what reason? What is really the objective of really installing this solar? And I mean, you wouldn't mind a parent. You'll be bothered when a parent eats, then the child is hungry. I mean, this is just really the analogy that goes to it. But I wouldn't say it's a bad idea, because generally solar will be, or renewable energy will be the way to go. But for the Nigerians, looking at the Nigerian side, the Nigerian citizen side, it's bad optics.
Now let's talk about these alternative sources, because in the first few minutes of conversing, the one that just comes to mind is solar. But when you talk about alternative sources of renewable energy, how much of an abundance do we have in Nigeria that we can actively tap into?
Nigeria is basically at the equator, so you have almost all year round. Even when sometimes it rains, there's overcast in the sky, everywhere is dark, then the sun still comes out. In some countries, you don't really get this abundance of sunlight. So Nigeria basically has the potential, has the resources. We may not have much for wind, but we have for solar, we have for hydro. You know, hydro is also renewable energy. So, but most people always focus on solar. But hydro has always been there. Nigeria built its first hydro dam many years ago, around our independence. So this is something that we have in abundance, and we can utilize and channel it to provide energy and create energy security for our citizens.
How replicable is this in terms of affordable systems that can be affordable to the average Nigerian home when we talk about solar? Because most of the feedback we get most times is that the cost of purchase for average individuals is always far out of reach.
Yes, you know, basically it's not cheap. You have to look at it both sides. The earning power of the average Nigerian is not going to be, it's not really sufficient. We're still crying for minimum wage and other things. But if you look at it, most of these components are imported into the country. I know that a lot of indigenous companies are trying to look at establishing manufacturing or assembly plants in the country, which would actually drop the price of these items. And there's presently a government zero tax on some renewable energy component. So, but basically, if you do not produce in the country, if you do not manufacture, if you do not control the value chain, it will still be expensive. So basically, it's expensive, but for a few Nigerians that are well-to-do, they are able to afford it. But there are a few companies out there that provide this capital, or what we say in Nigeria, pay small. So people can pay small and get this system, maybe pay over time, let's say 2 years, a year, or something close to that. So, but it's not really affordable for the average Nigerian, but government can look at it through creating these manufacturing industries in this country that can help the average Nigerian afford this renewable energy systems.
Now, I know in your field of expertise, you're more in tune with the data and statistics as it concerns conversations on renewable energy. From your surveys, when we look at the independence angle of this conversation, would you say that we're on the road, or are we getting there to achieving independence when it comes to contributing actively to the components to achieve particularly renewable energy in solar?
No, we are still far away.
How far off?
I would still say we are very far off, because it's not we have the resources, but you know, it goes through a long process, which is an industrial component, and for you to produce these components would not be, it's not what you just get in a day. And you know, even though there's a transfer of technology, let's say from China, majorly these components come from China and India. If there's a transfer of technology, you need to train manpower, you need a lot of components that will come into play. So we are still far off in terms of owning this technology within the country.
Does this have to do with the panels or the batteries? Because the other day we were in conversation about a lithium factory in somewhere like Nassau, and I understand that lithium is a core component of some of the battery for the solar sets. Is it on the battery angle? Is it the panel? Which aspects are we still lagging behind on?
We are lagging behind. Majorly, we have assembly plants for solar panels in Nigeria. I think Naseni is doing a great job on that. But for the batteries, yes, batteries have different components. So you have the lead acid battery, you also have the lithium. So lithium is basically the more modern of the batteries. We have a lot of it in natural state that's been mined. And this component, this particular lithium, because, okay, for example, let's say you have a 1 kilogram of lithium, assuming, and you have, for the equivalent of it for the lead acid battery would be something much higher. So lithium has a higher energy density, so it can retain a lot of, it has a higher energy capacity compared to lead acid, maybe wet cell or dry cell batteries. But for within the country right now, there are a lot of activities going on, but how far we've gone, we're still very far.
Now, still on independence, I understand independence is very key in achieving economic stability, particularly as a shield from the fluctuations in the global energy market. Now particularly, even conversations around Nigeria's 2025 budget is that it is at a risk of not being achieved because of what is happening at the global market stage.
Yes.
With conversations like this on the table of top government officials and energy stakeholders, what would it take for us to actively explore these alternative energies which would shield us from such global fluctuations?
Not minding that the 2024 budget has been extended I think to December.
December, yes.
So, like I said, we have the potential, but potential doesn't solve your problems. I mean, you could be a great footballer in training. When you come to the field, you need to perform. So this is the main thing. But we have, like I said, we have the potential, but we are still vulnerable to the global shocks. Because if you look at it essentially, just like oil, okay, we export crude oil, and we import
refined petroleum products.
Refined petroleum products. Now, if anything happens, just like Iran, Israel, the conflict between Iran and Israel, you also see that this war or this conflict affects the transportation, the logistics of this equipment. And if this continues to occur, or as it has occurred, then we are affected by the supply. So when the supply is low, the price goes higher. Just like when the demand is also high, the price goes higher as well. So if you look at it, we are not immune yet because we've not tapped our potential. Because the major idea behind the energy independence is that you can locally depend on your resources to provide for your needs. But we are really not doing that. Even if we have it, we have hydro dams. Majorly, most of them may not be as functioning to the optimal states they should be in. And if we look at solar, it's basically majorly for household and industries. But for large-scale solar farms that will be able to supply to the grid, we're still far off, even though some state governments are trying to put their hands together, and the federal government is also trying to do that, but we're still far off for that.
Now this is also a global conversation, as much as we start with the background of narrowing it down to Nigeria for relatability. Now when we go to the global community, the most recent gathering was the BRICS of member nations and partner nations like Nigeria looking for a seat at the table.
Yes.
A lot of spotlight was thrown on the fact when we talk about global warming and how much carbon emission comes out from Nigeria as a case for active participation towards global energy independence. When you look at this as part of the conversations at hand, how do we make a case for other nations that are actively tapping into renewable energy?
The conversation about carbon emissions has to do with the industrial nations and the developing nations or underdeveloped nations. And if you look at it, the argument has been that you cannot have industrialized with fossil fuels and want other countries to immediately transition towards clean energy. So it's become more of a political discussion. But if you look at it fundamentally, the ability for every nation, especially in Africa, we have the potential. We can achieve this. We can achieve this by advocating more for our own homegrown solutions. So let's say in Nigeria now, you have solar manufacturing plants. So you are immune for global shocks. You're also going to reduce your carbon emissions and other things. So it's really a way we can, but also not just that. Exporting our raw materials should be also looked into. Why can't you also export the refined products as well? Those are the things we should advocate for in the BRICS. Although I know, which you also know, that President Trump is saying, no, if you BRICS, I mean, increasing your tariff. So those challenges are there. But the Western nations are still very powerful.
Now I see some of these Western nations also headlining conversations towards electric vehicles. Now, I don't know how ready we are when it comes to the conversations for EV when you look at our power challenges, particularly with relations to electricity. Do you think that there is a projection on the table of, say, in the next 15 to 20 years, we can begin to scratch the surface in those advancements?
There's a lot of work or conversations going on around electric vehicles through proposals, through what some companies are doing, like Naseni also is doing that as well. But is the future? Let me use what the chief executive of Toyota was saying one time. He doesn't think that car owners should be restricted to choosing electric vehicles. He doesn't really think that's the future. So Toyota actually said at a time they would restrict most of their cars from 2025 to being electric vehicles, but now they've changed it because people are still in demand of cars that run on fuel or diesel. So we can't go that way. But if I am to say we still have a long way to go for electric vehicles, it will not be feasible, especially for private owners, because sometimes the charging port of a Tesla is different from that of a Toyota. So not to talk about the parts, the repairs, energy. I mean,
then even talking about commercial charging stations.
No, I was an advocate of saying if you really want to go for electric vehicles, you should start with the public sector. But the challenges that will go into it. It's not about starting. What about the maintenance? Okay, let's say you have a specific route. Let's say Maitama to Kubwa. So that would be that would be an electric vehicle route, just like you have the CNG buses right now. But digressing from your point, a lot of people have said and complained that despite the fact, or in spite of the fact that the price of petrol goes up and comes down, or whatever it is, the price of transportation still remains. So are we saying that even if you bring electric vehicles that may be cheaper in maintaining or in the fuel being used, that is electricity, are you going to say that the price is going to be the same? So you have also a lack of communication to the public to address these challenges as well.
This last point just touched on our next talking point, which is the cost of energy currently, as it were, in Nigeria. Now, with our dependence on fossil fuel, there have been attempts by Dangote, who's a major player in the industry, to reduce the ex-depot price and, by extension, affect the pump price of fuel. But as it stands, the cost of energy in Nigeria is quite astronomical, even though we're in a post-subsidy removal regime. How do we relate this in terms of contextuality to what is obtainable across the globe?
Let's not deceive ourselves. Every country in the world has some form of subsidy. So developing nations, third world countries cannot completely go out of remove subsidy completely. We've seen the effect. It's not been a positive effect on food prices. You can see it is clear. So in my opinion, in my honest opinion, I would say that it's more inflationary than it actually solves most of the problems. Because take for example, you could fill your tank maybe 15,000 naira before. You could drive it for 2 weeks. You could do a lot of things with it. But the ripple effect, or the effect across board, transporting food, oranges, rice and all, has really increased every single thing. Even the bus fares, let's say, of children going to school, it's increased. School fees has increased. So it's not really a positive thing, even though the government has said no. Petrol and removal of subsidies is in the best interest. We've saved money, we've done this, we've done that, but no. I mean, it's obvious to everybody. It wasn't really the best way to go about it. I believe personally that it's the inefficiencies in the oil sector that should have been looked at, not the removal of the subsidy. Yes.
One of such subsidies we still enjoy in Nigeria is electricity subsidy, and this is against the backdrop that the Bretton Woods institutions, the likes of the IMF, have been encouraging Nigeria to remove electricity subsidy. Last year, a lot of conversation and debates were sparked by the characterization of consumers into band A, B, C, and D, particularly with the increase in tariff. Now, I know the discos and gencos all argue that they need to have a cost-reflective tariff. But when you look at this in terms of the energy of gas to power, some of the gas power stations in terms of energy, is there a genuine case for this gencos and discos as to why we need band A and a hike in electricity tariff?
If you look at it, I was hearing the minister talking about, or his assistant talking about, we now produce, they don't say 6,000 megawatts, they say 6 gigawatts. It's just a change, it's the same thing. 6,000 megawatts is 6 gigawatts. But going back to your point, the truth is that we cannot, it's not about classifying. Yes, we need cost-effective tariffs. But in France, if you remember, that was it 2 years back, there was very serious riots for just increase or removal of subsidy in energy. And I mean, I'm sure a country like France, which is an advanced country, people earn better, there's a system in place, but not like in Nigeria. I think one of there was an argument at the time, should government have removed subsidy on electricity and left for petrol or diesel, or which would have been better. But we can see that the effect on petrol has not been good, and we can also see it going. We can't really quantify that for electricity right now, but yes, you really need a cost-effective tariff for the investor to recover his or her money, the investment that has been made. But for the average person, we need to balance return on investment and public, what you call it, public security. But it's not been a very good experience for Nigerians removing subsidy on electricity. I think government needs to still have the word subsidy in some form for every single sector that we have in this country.
And even in conversations on that, the urban areas are quite different from the rural areas. I know that the African Development Bank had pledged over $500 million to Nigeria to support the rural electrification project. But even as it were, the number of those to be captured under this initiative is merely 500,000 as compared to our population of over 200 million Nigerians. I know no effort is too little in this conversation, but if we're to really assess this in terms of commitment, how would you say it has fared?
It's a good one. Little drops of water
make the ocean.
Yes. So it's a good one. But as we've seen over time in this country, every intervention, every policy, we can talk about it in beautiful PowerPoints and all, but the ripple effect down to the very last person is not really felt. But it's a good one, and just hopeful that the money that has been budgeted for, that has been pumped into support, would really go towards what it's been meant for, and provide the succor for Nigerians as well.
Now, the timeline of events, especially with SDGs 2030, has its energy projection as well. I looked at some of those documents, and it said to increase electricity access to 75% by 2020 and to 90% by 2030, and also to improve renewable energy mix to 10%, just 10% by 2025. This is 2025 as we speak. That was a document back in 2022. Would you say we've kept up with that goal?
Very little. Yes, there's been some increase in energy access. If you check the data compared to what we have now, I think we're about from 58%, we're about 60-61 right now. So we've moved a little ahead. But what I would say is the increase in energy access has usually been focused on the urban areas, but like what Ari is actually doing, trying to focus on the rural areas, because I used to build mini grids in the Niger Delta, that's in Ondo State, and I know the requirements. Most of the fish you see that are being transported to the urban areas, most of them cannot be preserved. So you have people, they have to dry the fish, dry the crayfish, but if you have light in those places, they can be preserved. And you can have freezers, cooling systems for the locals there. But essentially, we've not really done so much. The impact has not been as deep as one would like to see.
Now, in terms of community and stakeholder engagement, I know you talked about the need for us to have more manufacturing plants when we have conversations around renewable energy. But as it stands now, in terms of even the current vocational training institutes we have, last year there were conversations on the need for such institutions to include universities to begin to look at self-preferred solutions to their energy challenges.
Yes.
How important is this conversation, and how attainable are action plans that can be laid in that direction?
It's very key. You can see that basically there's not really difficult in providing these actionable plans for universities. It's a training institution. Even if you don't have it in university, you can have it in an institute. But I can speak especially for the renewable aspect. A lot of private companies have really pushed for training opportunities. I know it's not very cheap for everybody, but I also train as well. Korean has also made it helpful for institutions to be able to train individuals. I believe that the universities, being the foundation of advanced knowledge, can also go into this and provide hands-on training for students. A 500 level engineering student should be able to design a solar system well, and even if you cannot connect all the components, but you should be able to do that without any stress. So we need more of this for the universities. I believe that the policymakers know more about this, and they know what is really needed, which is very critical.
Now, there's also been this backlash on agencies of government saddled with responsibilities to actively contribute to these conversations. One of such institutions, I'm very sure a lot of our viewers out there might not know, is the National Power Training Institution of Nigeria, NAPTIN,
yes,
which is the lead agency for such vocational training. Why do you think that they don't have as much visibility when these conversations are being had?
NAPTIN does a lot of training, but like I said, communication is really the issue. If you really speak to most people, they talk more of the private institutions training individuals, but NAPTIN should be at the forefront. It's more of the least known institution in the power sector.
I agree with you on that. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, so it's something that I have a lot of friends that work there, and I know the knowledge they have, the expertise, but they are not really at the forefront or being projected about what they do. So I think that the government needs to put, or the Ministry of Power or the minister himself really needs to look at NAPTIN to push this training towards, because government will definitely be cheaper compared to the other institution, and we need to train a lot of young people. The private individuals will not be able to do it, companies do it on their own, but NAPTIN would have the capacity. They have a very big structure and they are building, expanding on this. So NAPTIN has the power. I just believe that they should create more advocacy on training and what they do actually.
I know we're all stakeholders in this conversation, talking about the Minister of Power. Sometime in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, he went viral in a comment. He looked to address our energy efficiency in terms of our habits as end consumers of energy in whatever form, particularly electricity. He said that Nigerians are poor energy efficient persons, particularly with the use of refrigerators, even lighting systems in buildings when they leave and whatnot. Do you see some sense in what he was trying to say then, before he received backlash on social media?
Yes, we may not be very energy efficient, probably because it wasn't that expensive. Now with the band A issue, which I don't really agree that should increase band for some, tariff for some areas and leave for other areas, but for the fact that Nigerians, he said that Nigerians are not really conscious of the energy usage, but that does not mean we have a poor habit of managing electricity. Means it's the main challenge in the sector. It's not. The main challenge, like I said, is inefficiency. Not to talk. Let's not even talk about corruption. Inefficiency is really the problem, and manpower as well. Just like we spoke about NAPTIN training a lot of people. So manpower training is very, very key on this. But I don't think it's about we not managing power. But Nigerians are actually notorious for that.
Now, let's also talk about this angle of the vandalization on a wide scale that has affected some of the conversations on having efficiency even in transmission. I know there have been agencies of government saddled with protecting such infrastructure, the NSCDC, the police and whatnot, but often at times when you discuss this issue with people on the street, they tell you a layman has no business vandalizing such thing or stealing from such. It's active players in that industry who know the value of, say, an amok cable and whatnot, that will look to steal from such transmission towers. What do you think is the best approach in resolving that issue?
Well, first of all, there's a demand for it, and there's the vandalism is the supply. So somebody steals, somebody sells. It's just like there have been cases where you see the police talks about equipment that have been stolen, they've been sold back. I mean, it's open to the public. It's not hiding. I'm not saying that, but truly, you cannot be a layman to go and steal or understand the value of an armored cable or go near electricity, because electricity also has magnetic properties. If an armored cable, there's a fault and it falls here, it attracts everything. But going back to what you're saying, to the question, the fact is that the security, the first or the most important function of government, which is to protect the lives and properties of the citizens. Electricity is part of the property. Is a public property. It's part of what provides light for us. So it's what government should really look at and stand up to what its responsibilities are.
Now, usually for us, the media, when these conversations are had, I must tell you, the struggle in being able to delineate between energy and the power sector is a big struggle, especially when you have to communicate with the viewers.
Yes.
And not having an expert in the building, when we have these conversations on energy and the power sector, how do we communicate better to the viewers and even the end users on the responsibility of key actors and stakeholders in this engagement?
I mean, it's something that's very simple. You should have maybe like weekly magazine. You can have magazines. You can have weekly webinars, editorials that people can, because mostly you cannot communicate with the citizens by when there's a fault somewhere. There's no light. Then maybe the government is silent for, the minister is silent for like 2-3 days. So we really need advocacy. They come to TV, just like I'm here to speak, educate citizens on these town hall meetings, which has become the popular thing, roundtable discussions. Really go to the media to speak about what is really happening in the power sector. If you look at it, government officials or the Nigerian government, they don't really interact with the citizens. They don't really communicate. You know, communication is not just speaking, but do you understand what I'm saying? I ask questions, and we get to a middle ground, and we have our objectives or the end result. Okay, you said 1, 2, 3. The next time we are going to meet, okay, what happened to 1, 2, 3? We are able to track that discussion. So that's basically what I think the government should do. Coming out to speak to the citizens through the media, speaking through radio, newspapers, and now especially for the young ones, social media.
Now talking about energy, we've talked about oil in passing, petroleum, gas. We keep on talking about the number of cubic feet that are untapped when we talk about the gas potentials of Nigeria. But once those conversations on transiting to clean and green energy from the renewable angle is had, do you think that, as it were, the potentials which you've quite rightly agreed upon would be able to suffice in terms of providing alternative to our over-dependence on what is existing already?
Yes. We must still utilize our conventional energy sources, but we can reduce the reliance on it. Just like you've asked me, imagine in the north, some state governors can go off the grid. You have abundant sunlight that can power government buildings, offices, schools. So it's very, very possible, and it should be done. And most importantly, we should use our comparative advantage. If this state is rich in gas, you can use gas. I know that the potential of the solar for the north is higher than the south. So it doesn't mean that in the south you wouldn't go use your solar, you wouldn't tap into the solar energy potential, but the north would have a greater advantage of doing that. So I think that comparative advantage would be very, very important. And most importantly, the economics should favor whatever you are doing. So that should fall more for the financial experts.
Now you've raised a very salient point. As much as this is an alternative, it doesn't stop us from maximizing the available conventional energy sources.
Yes.
Now I would digress a bit and talk about this point, because a lot of Nigerians were elated ahead of a potential nationwide distribution to begin on the 15th of August, which is next month. Dangote said he would be distributing bulk supply to parts of the country in order to curb some of our challenges with high cost of purchasing fuel at the pump price. But this circular was met by some back push from oil marketers,
yes,
transporters associations as well, and people are talking about a perceived monopoly from Dangote. Help us understand the conversation for the average Nigerian watching this morning. Is it a good thing in one stead, or do the marketers have a genuine reason to be concerned?
If the marketers or the association had been doing better, Dangote would not be the center of the conversation. That's the truth. Nature abhors the vacuum. But be that as it may, I think that Dangote is doing what anybody would have done. If you see the opportunity, you take it. This is not about morality or what is right and wrong. This is about taking the opportunity. So he has built his refinery. He's doing what should, because he borrowed money to do that. So he's doing what he will to maximize his profit. I I would not say it's a wrong thing, because majorly it's also politics. There's the argument in the oil sector about they don't want the price to drop, or some said they've gone out of business because they cannot import that. I mean, if Dangote can give Nigerians we don't want a monopoly, but if you can supply our needs, we don't have fuel scarcity, or going somewhere you don't queue for hours, or a Sunday morning when you should be resting after a difficult week, you have to go and queue for hours. I mean, it should, we can move that. So I think that as citizens, we should only just demand for accountability, which is very, very important, not just who is giving us fuel at a cheaper rate. Just give us quality fuel and we move forward with our lives. That is very, very important, because it's part of the energy security.
Now, still talking energy security, the role of the NNPL, it now has a new leadership, a new board led by the engineer Bayo Ojulari team. Is the expectations versus the reality? They've only been in office for a few months now, but there are high hopes by Nigerians on how much they can perform. Let's get your projections in that regard on the engineer Bayo Ojulari led NNPC.
Well, he has a background in the private sector, so we expect better from him in terms of efficiency, in the way we've known government officials to have acted for historically. So now that we have someone that's coming with this background, we just hope that politics does not interfere, because he's going to fight a behemoth. It's not like he comes in there, he's a very intelligent man, he can do wonders, then one day the problems are solved. No, it will take time to do that. I believe that one of the things, he should make NNPC less opaque. NNPC has been said to be a country of his own, a government of his own. People, you heard recently, is it 21 trillion is it missing, or
from audit reports?
Yes, I mean 21 trillion it's like the budget of a country. So how did it happen? Is it that you were selling oil, the oil that you were selling was not even reported, or drilled and selling was not even reported that it was part of what was being done in the country? So I believe that he has a huge task on his hand. Whether I can do it or not will depend on time. But looking back, I think the more you see about NNPC, the less you understand. That's just the way it's been.
Now, in conclusion, now we're talking timelines and set goals. With the current pace of the world's transition towards green and clean energy, how do we set achievable goals and timelines with regards to our own peculiar situation in the conversation?
We need to understand, especially government needs to understand, and I think they know, but they don't act like they know the importance of energy, not just energy security for businesses. I mean, we have lights here. You need 24 hours light. This is a TV station. Hospitals as well require this. So we need to set a timeline, which it could be short term, medium term, long term. But in the short term, we need to really look at what is achievable in terms of, okay, what challenges can be overcome in the short term. Is it to get more power because we basically, let me look at it this way, we have a very low energy generation in Nigeria, very, very low, compared to other countries. In fact, compared to Egypt and South Africa, we are doing abysmally very poor. So in the short term, how do we boost power generation? Because you can only just depend, like going back to what you said, a lot of Nigerians cannot afford a lot of these solar systems to power their homes, so they depend on the grid for this, but it's expensive depending on the band that you are on. So we can look at it in terms of increasing the energy generation, making the system more efficient. Some of the we've heard Siemens has been carrying out maintenance in the, I think, right from the time when President Buhari was there, but we've not still seen the end of it. So those are part of the challenges that we need to look at. But in the short term, government needs to really put its foot down and reduce the inefficiencies in the system. Not just saying you've increased by this is the highest generation you've done in like 30 years, 6 megawatts or 6 gigawatts, like 6,000 megawatts, 6 gigawatts, like you say. But we really need to know what they are really doing in terms of concrete achievements within the sector.
And we can only know that by setting KPIs as well to assess our performance through evaluation, monitoring, and assessment. And one of such would be the challenge of unmetered customers. When we talk about power now, as much as they claim they have improved generation, millions of Nigerians home are still yet unmetered, despite humongous amounts earmarked for metering Nigerian homes. How do we curb this perennial issue of corruption when it comes to metering?
I mean, if you ask me about the metering issue, I don't even know what to say. But it will interest you to know that we are claiming to have about 12 million metered customers in a country of 220 million people. Is that not odd? Is it that people are unmetered, or deliberately, or there's no access? Because it's a very low number. Are you saying that you have only 12 million households or industries and businesses? It's really low. But also because the government has not really put its foot down against the discourse to say, look, this is part of your performance, your KPIs. Meter the customers, let the billing be fair. Not is an estimated bill, so somebody puts on everything in his house and says, oh well, what I do, or illegal tapping of the light. So I think that those are KPIs for the distribution companies to really look at, and the government should really put its foot down to ensure that every single household is going to be metered. But this has been pushed for long and it hasn't been done. So I don't think maybe there have been measures to punish the discourse to ensure that citizens are metered, because it will be fair if what I use is what I'm built for.
Well, Engineer Omokaro, this brings us back to the subject of where we are as a nation. You had talked about the fact that there's an import-driven angle to this conversation, and even when we correlate it to the metering issue we have, is the fact that we cannot quite point our fingers and say there's a metering company here, the meter manufacturing or coupling factory here and there in the country, despite this being a key component of the conversation. Where are we as it concerns productions of meters and our over-dependence on importation?
Well, we have local companies, a lot of local companies manufacturing, I use the word carefully, manufacturing meter, because majorly when we assemble we call it manufacturing. So but if you say that you're producing the main components, no, definitely we are not. But the problem is not the number of people being metered or whether the meters are available or not. The issue is that most times government will come out and tell us, okay, we've given this amount of money to so and so companies to meter this number of people, then the issue dies down. So it seems there's a benefit to the distribution companies that they earn more money from unmetered customers. So like the idea I was discussing with someone was that, let's say they send 1 megawatt of power to this place now. So let's say ADBN, you and I, we get just a chunk of it to being metered. Then the rest is just shared equally, whether you use this amount of energy, whether you've been missing from your home for 6 months. I don't mean missing in the sense that you traveled, then suddenly you are billed an amount that you didn't even use at all. So the thing is more of the economy, or to the economics of their own pocket. They gain much more from unmetered customers than they would gain from what you use. You pay for what you use.
Now, bringing it back to the involvement of governments, this current administration is 2 years in office. I was looking at the scorecard of the minister's performance, and when he came to the Minister of Power, Chief Adebayo Adelabu, it was more or less from reactions, even not in terms of what he has done. People are reacting to the fact that the president needs to probably rejig or change hands. Do you think he has a part to bear in terms of the blame sharing? in his performance
Would
so
you-
far in 2
Would
years?
you make the Minister of Health an accountant? Or
That
you-
wouldn't be obtainable in worlds where we talk about needing to have a technocrat in that space.
Would you make the Minister of Attorney General, Federation Minister of Justice an accountant? No. I don't know why engineers, people with the technical ability. I mean, I was part of the association I belong to, SIPEN, recently spoke about making sure that the minister, the technical expert, are engineers. They know what the issues are. An accountant heading or a lawyer heading the power sector is not ideal, because if I'm speaking to you in technical language, there are things you will never understand. No matter how intelligent or smart you are, it will take time, and this is not something that you need to learn basically everything on the job. You should be already experienced. I mean, you won't take an engineer, for example, and make Attorney General of the Federation. So this is a very critical thing. If you look at the past ministers, how many of them have been co-engineers? I think Maman Saleh was the only one. Fashola, His Excellency Governor Babatunde Fashola. If you look at now, Chief Adelabu, if you look before them, they're basically no engineers. So I think that Koren, SIPEN, every institution within the power sector should advocate, and should be a law that an engineer, experienced engineer with his team should be a minister of power. It's a very simple thing. How are you going to solve it?
Now, in closing, it's also in revamping some of the key government-owned institutions and industries that actively contribute to these conversations on energy security. A number of them are moribund. A number of them have also gulped up humongous amounts put into them as turnaround maintenance. And yet, when we converse on energy security, it leaves a lot to be desired. How do we implement these actionable plans in revamping these institutions and industries to actively optimize where we are when we talk about energy security?
Oh, well, are you talking about NNPC refineries that are not because that is a scandal. It's terrible. But for other industries, private sector companies as well, they really need power to run. This is very, very important, because imagine you investing a lot of money into a business, not just killed because of politics or killed because of insecurity, but it's killed because of the cost of production. So we really need to look at reducing the cost of production. I think that there was a time a study came out to say most of the investments in the production process, 60% goes to electricity. Not even your staffing, not even the source of electricity as well. It's very, very key, because people have to depend on diesel generators, depend on a lot of things, and maintenance costs and the prices is very, very high. So
I see technically you've spoken about one angle of the question I asked, but you've avoided the one on the scandal with the amounts turned into turnaround maintenance of the refineries. We talk about the technicalities of some having passed the first stage, and some being 75% optimally functioning. There's some technical terms used to explain where we are as that is. In your opinion, you've said it's a scandal, but in your honest assessment, how much of a problem is all these technical terms thrown around when we talk about the state of our refineries?
Are they really being done? We hear of technical or turnaround maintenance for many years, and we see the lights. I mean, it was even said that the news media, there are some pictures were taken. We had
gas
flaring, and all of a sudden we're hearing this. So I try to avoid, because the more you see, the less you understand about the way NNPC functions. So I think that it's not a good one, even in the global space. When other countries look at Nigeria, it's a disgraceful thing for that to even happen. and nobody is being questioned or asked about this. So it's something that I prefer we speak only about the technical part and avoid the political and scandalous behavior of the management.
Well, it's a fine place to leave it, and as we wrap up the conversation, I'll just give you the opportunity to give your commemorative message on the occasion of the 2025 Global Energy Independence Day here in our studio.
Oh, well, I'm very excited to have been here to give a talk on this Global Energy Independence Day. I hope that Nigeria can achieve, not just celebrate, but also achieve energy access across Nigeria. People can have access to energy. For women in the rural areas, they can preserve their food, make profits and sell to train their children, for men as well. And I also pray that and hope, I use the word pray because it's very, very important in a context where some of the things we do not understand that are happening in Nigeria is we can be able to churn it out and give a very, very good energy, good energy access to Nigerians. So happy Global Independence, Energy Independence Day to all Nigerians and to the world in general.
Well, I must thank you once again, Engineer Osayande Felix Omokaro, for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.